advantage of the opportunity. But right now is about right now.
The Plan B, Ohio State Buckeyes!
Give everything you got in your heart to this place.
Hello and welcome to Rushing the Field presented by Xfinity. He's Joshua Perry, I'm Nicole Auerbach. Week 12 almost in the books. We're recording this while there are some games still happening. It was almost like a topsy-turvy, upside-down type of day. I mean, there were a couple results that kept this from getting completely out of hand, but Alabama's loss to Oklahoma really turns the playoff picture into something else. I mean, it was a wild day.
Yeah, topsy-turvy, I think, is a great way to describe it. Like, you mentioned Alabama, Oklahoma. That was a crazy one. Texas A&M, the way that they started that game and then came all the way back was insane.
Michigan almost lost.
Michigan almost lost. Georgia Tech almost lost to a Boston College team that is not very good.
No.
Like, weird stuff was happening today.
I'm kind of moving towards your favorite take, which is that there maybe shouldn't be 12 teams in this playoff this year.
So that's the take, and I think probably the more measured take is the idea that we have to have auto bids, and I understand why.
Yeah, so you play for something.
Yes.
Play towards something.
It's thrown a wrench in everything.
Yeah,
though.
it is.
It's making it difficult for
Well,
me.
especially if we end up having like an ACC champion and a Group of 5 champion that are not really top 12 teams.
Right.
That's going to cause some chaos.
Well, I'm going to be on Twitter going crazy if that's the case.
Yes, you will. Let's talk about the SEC first, because Oklahoma's win over Alabama is one of the more impactful results of November. 2-point win. This is an Alabama team that had basically been treated by the selection committee like they hadn't had any losses. They were comfortably in the top 4, poised to get a bye, maybe win or lose in the SEC championship game. And now it's looking a little bit different. It was a game where Ty Simpson didn't look great all the time. He's bailed them out a lot of times with the pass game.
100%.
Couldn't run the ball,
Right.
which we have seen over and over again. And then Oklahoma's defense really stepped up. They carry that offense to the finish line of some of these games.
No doubt. And I'll start by saying this. You mentioned Oklahoma and what they did offensively. It was not a great day for them. Alabama actually almost doubled them up. It's 212 yards for Oklahoma, 4th fewest by an FBS team to win against a top 5 team since 2000. It's a stat that I found.
Wow.
But it was this idea that they got turnovers, right? Ty Simpson throws an interception. He loses a fumble. Those are huge plays in the game. John Mateer was able to do a little bit of that running that we've seen when Oklahoma's been able to move the ball. And then you complement that with a defense that was able to take advantage of this Alabama offensive front. They got pressure on Ty Simpson. They bottled up the run. And one of the comments I made to you earlier in the day is I think this is going to be a big day for Ty Simpson. And you look at the passing yardage, it was. But they got pressure on him. They made him miss some throws. They made him turn the football over. And ultimately, that was the winning path.
Yeah, and listen, like this is an Oklahoma team that deserves a ton of credit. They've been playing playoff eliminators the last 2 weeks, and they've won them both. This is part of the reason why Brent Venables took over the defense. He said before the season, like, that's what I'm good at. I'm good at calling a defense. And it's made a huge difference for this team. I mean, even like a month ago, I don't know if I would have thought they could win these types of games.
No.
Well, that was when like Mateer was like still maybe injured. Like he was off.
Even if he was fully healthy, had never been injured, I'm not exactly sure that I would have looked at them and said they're a team who is built to win these games.
To beat Alabama again.
Right.
They beat them last year, which was like one of the Sunners.
It
and
was
this wasn't
really insane.
as shocking.
No, it wasn't. And I think, to your point, it's because the defense is in a much better place. And even with John Mateer maybe being limited or not playing as well as he did early in the year, it's still a much better offense than what they had a year ago, too.
For sure.
So, you know, it's one of those teams where now you're kind of looking at what their path is and how do you rank them. And similarly for Alabama, what the hell are you going to do with them when you try to rank them now?
So that's what I think is really, really difficult. And my bosses are making me do these rankings. And it's very difficult to figure out what to do because you have some head-to-head results in here, right? So Oklahoma beat Alabama. They're both 2-loss teams. They should stay in that order. Well, then how high can they rise, right? As we're recording this, Texas is losing to Georgia. If Texas comes back and beats them, then they got to stay behind them because Texas beat Oklahoma, right? And so that's like you get boxed in by these results. Now, if Texas loses, picks up third loss, they can fall away from the picture.
Well, interestingly enough, too, with the Texas, if they lost, now you're also looking at what do you do with Georgia, knowing that they lost to Alabama as well.
Correct.
Right?
But
so,
they still, the one loss, and then you would say the strength of their wins But so I think I would move them up above Texas A&M. So
yeah.
it's very complicated in the SEC because Texas A&M has not played these teams, and then all of the other ones have played each other.
Yeah, it's wild. That is something that we should address when we get to A&M.
Yes, but real quick, do you think that the committee would put those teams ahead of like Oregon, who doesn't really have any impressive wins?
I mean, that is a tough question. I think they would be justified in doing that. But the question you would have to ask yourself is, what changed in this 1 week that you decided to do it right now?
Right.
Because they had been
do it later.
Yeah, they've been basically telling us like we're very comfortable with Oregon even without having a resume that's littered with great wins. What was the difference this week?
That's a good point. Let's talk about Texas A&M. So this game was crazy.
Insane.
A total tale of two halves situation. So at halftime, South Carolina is winning 30-3, and it's been a nightmare half for Texas A&M. Marcel Reed, the worst we've ever seen him. Picks, the fumble, all sorts of mistakes. They've drops from receivers that we don't see drop the ball like that. There was just like everything that could go wrong went wrong.
Yes.
And then everything flipped in the second half. 28 unanswered points for Texas A&M, and they stay unbeaten somehow. It was just a total collapse from South Carolina, total comeback for A&M. But, like, I don't think I come out of this feeling great about A&M. Like, it's going to be hard to erase what we saw in the first half of that game.
So before we get into all of that, was the collapse or the comeback more notable to you?
Well, we kind of thought the collapse might happen.
Yes,
right?
but that was the one-of-a-kind collapse. I don't think any SEC team in a conference game that was up by 27 points had ever lost.
Okay.
So that's why I ask it. Like, it's an insane thing when you actually think about the position they were in. They were up 30-3 at halftime.
But that was a team all year that, like, had a couple of dudes that were trying to carry them to wins.
They've had fourth-quarter leads before and lost all of the games this year, too. So certainly interesting. South Carolina had 80% of their yardage in the first half of that game. And I know a lot of people are going to focus on Texas A&M and the offense and Marcel Reed and how poorly he played, the turnovers that he had. You mentioned the drops. Part of this was also that their defense no-showed the first half of that game, too. It was an insane thing to watch. And then when it started clicking and they got the momentum and they got the 12th man on their side, you saw this team that you look at and say, oh, they can win a championship. But you and I have bounced around this question. Are they a team that can win different styles, or are they just a high-variance team that's playing with fire? And after today, it feels like they're just a high-variance team that's playing with fire. The top end, really good, but on their low end, they could get 30-3 in a half of a game against a South Carolina team that's not very good at all.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see, like, the rest of their season. They have Texas in the finale for the regular season, presumably an SEC championship game. I'm with you where, like, they could win the SEC and they could do all this, and I still don't know who's going to show up in the playoff. It's week to week with them. So it's really interesting and I think concerning coming out of that.
Concern
I think I trust
is the right
them
word.
less than we trust some of these other national title contenders.
I fully agree with that. Like, they were already kind of teetering on the trust meter. Like, you would put them, if Ohio State's a 10, you would have probably had them at a 7. After watching them today, you probably put them at a 3, which is, it's aggressive, but that performance is not one where you're like, oh man, love what they did.
It's just going to be hard to, like, have faith in Marcel Reed in big moments after that.
It is. And also, if their defense forgets how to tackle,
That too.
very clearly they're going to give up plays if you got athletes on the other side.
Let's talk about a team that has grown and kind of been like one line up over the course of this season. That's Notre Dame. So they beat Pittsburgh 37-15. It was their last game against a ranked opponent, kind of the last one where we were like getting up for a Notre Dame opponent. Could this be a big one? Game day was there. Pat Narduzzi had said, I don't care if they score 100 points, which I feel like they took as a challenge. But ultimately, this wasn't even a competitive game. They were able to do what they wanted to do. Jeremiah loved things. And again, Pitt still has a path through the ACC. But it just felt like this is one of those moments where Notre Dame just says, hey, we're a different team than we were at the beginning of the year. We're better defensively. We have one of the best offenses in the country, and we deserve to be in the playoff. Yeah,
it's one of those where the team that we watched at the beginning of the year is a very different team right now. And I think that part of Notre Dame's process is we have to state our playoff case every single week because we started off so poorly.
Marcus talked about that a lot last year, where it was like elimination games every game.
It's what it is, but they're convincing, though. That's the thing about it is the more you watch them, the more you start to believe in them. Mason Heinschel, the quarterback for Pitt, came in his 5 starts since he took over, and he was averaging over 300 passing yards a game. And then they limited him to 126 and an INT, right? Like, it was not a very good game. They made a freshman look like a freshman. That was my biggest question in this matchup is now you got an offense where they got some guys, you got some juice early on the year. The defense was not clicking. I trust this defense right now as much as I trust anything that they do. I think my question may have shifted. C.J. Carr in big games, the 2 big games at the beginning of the year, Miami, Texas A&M, and then they had USC and they just played Pitt. 5 of his 6 interceptions have come in the ranked matchups. So now as I spin forward to college football playoff, those are the type of teams that you're going to see. Is he going to play clean football? It feels like sometimes he's trying to force plays. I don't think he has to do that in the offense that he's playing in.
It's a good point, too, because a couple of those matchups were really early. So you're like, okay, well, he's a first-time starter.
Right.
But it has shown up in some of these bigger games as well, and he does have so many weapons. You know, obviously now they've got a go-to receiver.
Yes. They got a couple of them.
They've got a couple of them.
Right.
So there's a lot that is working. Last of the big results in ranked-on-ranked matchup, USC 26, Iowa 21. This was a really interesting game because we were talking about the rain and the way it looked. It looked like a Big Ten game at Iowa, and I would be comfortable in that. USC came back and scored the game's final 19 points, shut out Iowa in the second half. It feels like these are the type of wins that Lincoln Riley loves. Like, he feels really good about winning physical games, games that are tough, games they have to come back in, but games that look like Big Ten games. Because we said, hey, can they win in this conference?
Yeah, it's the thing that has kind of shifted in my mind when I think about USC. They had Michigan, and that's a team that's big, physical, wants to run the football, and they handled them. You mentioned this matchup, very similar thing. Iowa is a physical team. They've got a good defense, and they handle them coming from behind in the game, which is not something we expected. They went on the road, played Nebraska, and I know that there was an injury to Dylan Raiola that certainly affected that outcome. But, again, another one of those Big Ten games where they had to find a good win. And now it's starting to shift a little bit to USC could play different styles. And now you look at them as a team that has a path to the playoff. You ask the question, how dangerous are they? The defense is still an issue, no doubt. But now it feels like they're more comfortable in these games that are a little bit more questionable. They don't have to score a million points to feel like they can win. And
this is coming off of a season last year where they had all those one-score losses, and then they blew all those fourth-quarter leads.
Lincoln tried to tell us.
He did.
Yeah, and we didn't listen.
Yeah, he did. But this is a team that is playing with a lot of confidence. They believe they can win those games. They've got a ton of offensive weapons. Going to be really, really interesting. They've got Oregon right around the corner. A team that doesn't really have a marquee win to put its hat on.
It's going to be, I mean, there are a lot of storylines when you start to dig into that one. I would make the argument that Jaden Maiava as a whole has played better than Dante Moore, and Dante is probably the guy who gets a little bit more credit for, you know, being the elite quarterback of the two. I don't know how that swings in either direction. Oregon's going to want to run the football, right? Like, we know USC has been running the football pretty well. It's an interesting matchup.
Yeah, we'll get to that one in our midweek episode. More other results, other impact in just a second. So we've got to talk about the ACC next.
Yes.
This conference is a mess. We say this week over week. We have no idea how the playoff is going to shake out. But there was one result that I think we were keeping an eye on. I put it on my impactful playoff games to watch because Duke was kind of a wild card as a potential 4-loss ACC champion. Virginia was like, don't worry about it.
Yep.
Virginia 34, Duke 17. And now Virginia is very close to being a lock for the ACC championship game. Don't know who they're going to play. But when you're talking about okay, are they going to be a one-bid league, just their champion? Virginia's going to have a really good shot to play for that spot. And then you've got the Miami question of could they backdoor in as an at-large team, or is enough chaos happening in this conference to get them into the championship game?
Which is a wild thing to think about. And the idea that Miami's path is so narrow through a conference championship is insane because of what we thought about them at the beginning of the year. I'm glad Virginia did clear this up, although I was kind of rooting for chaos to make a point about how crazy the system is. But
so were you rooting for Georgia Tech to lose?
Yeah, I was rooting for any chaos scenario that we could get to be like, this is crazy, we shouldn't do it like this, but couldn't get it. But even with that, it's like, I respect Virginia. I respect the way that they've won this year. I still feel very much the same about anybody in that conference that's not Miami kind of feels like it's
A little
it's just
below.
It's going to be difficult,
Yeah.
right? And like watching Georgia Tech, that was the other team that I think a lot of us were like, Haynes King in that offense, like they got to thread the needle with his usage, but if it's working, it's working. They're a pretty good team.
Yeah, and they can be physical against the other physical teams.
And then you watch that performance that they had today, and it's one of those like A&M, I'm alarmed.
Yeah. Miami, by the way, won 41-7 over NC State.
They're doing the style
They're
points.
going for style points. They absolutely
They have
are.
to at this point.
They have to because there was so much separation between them and Notre Dame, who they beat in the first rankings.
Yeah. I mean, it's the reality of the situation, though. They went out and they had a couple of good wins early, and then they started screwing around. And this is what you got to do now. You have to make up a little bit of ground here, and it's only their fault.
So there is a world, though, where they get in as an at-large team. And I guess actually could maybe box Notre Dame out if the committee kind of totally reevaluates.
Let me ask you this question. At what point would it be unacceptable for them to come back around and say the head-to-head matters?
I don't think they should do it at this point, right?
I don't think if they haven't done it already, I don't think they should do it at all.
They have been very complimentary of Notre Dame. They've talked about how consistent they've been, how good the running backs are, and how good the quarterback is, and the defense has gotten better. I agree. I think it would be very hypocritical to then suddenly be like, oh, actually, now we're going to revert back to a 3-point result from week 1.
Where Notre Dame was on the road.
Yeah.
Which is basically a wash if we're on a neutral field.
So, I mean, but that's what's going to be really interesting. I think there are people, Miami truthers, ACC truthers out there that want that result to be come into play.
All over social media where people are like, the head-to-head has to matter. And my response to that is, yes, it has to matter if it was 2 weeks ago, if it was 3 weeks ago. I don't think it has to matter if we watch that game in week 1 and then we've watched everything both of those teams have done since, and one team looks like they're getting better and the other team looks like they're middling. Like it's not something that I'm concerned with.
I agree. I'll be interested to see if at any point they close that gap a little bit because the way that they say it, I've done the mock, is head-to-head is one of the tiebreakers between like teams.
Right.
But if there's separation, you don't have to adhere to it.
I feel like the tiebreaker needs to have an expiration date on it.
Yeah, I do too.
The head-to-head.
Let's talk about another one of your favorite angles on the CFP, the Group of 5 race.
Yes.
We finally had a team that was ranked, USF. They promptly lost to Navy. So now we don't know who is going to be ranked by the committee next week. I went through like the top 4 contenders, North Texas, JMU, Tulane, and Navy, and I think I'm going to put Tulane in my projection because they have 2 wins over power conference opponents. Their strength of schedule and strength of record are better than a lot of those other teams, and they have 5 wins over teams that are 500 or better. But this is very confusing when you don't have a lot of transparency from the committee, so I don't know where JMU came into play last week when they decided the American team was going to be the one that would kind of be the designated Group of 5 champion.
It's such an intriguing thing that you bring up. I think that they should have to separately rank the top Group of 5 contenders.
They should.
And they should have to release that as well because I want to know the same thing as you. So we finally figured out that South Florida was the team, and they appeared in the rankings. The week before that, the team that they put in there was in the rankings. Well, I want to know who is behind them on a week-to-week basis and how that changes so I can know what that pecking order is, especially since this Group of 5 race is so chaotic. Last year, it wasn't a concern because it was Boise the whole time, and we knew it. But now it's like, okay, if they rank one this week, I'd like to know who the rest of them are behind them, even if they're not ranked.
And is it just going to be a revolving door for the American champion?
Right, because
Or does JMU
where
have a
does
shot?
JMU fit in here? And
Their schedule strength is tough.
That's what a lot of people are going to say.
Yeah,
right.
they only had 1 game against a Power 4 team, and it was Louisville, and they lost, and Louisville just lost again.
Yes.
Like, that depreciates as well.
No doubt.
But that we don't have a lot of clarity for, so I would go Tulane and say, like, make the point about the non-conference scheduling.
Yeah, I'm totally there with you. And
again, it's not like Northwestern and Duke are great, but those are good wins for them.
I mean, Duke had a very clear path to the ACC championship. So who's to say that they're not a great team in some alternate universe that isn't the one we currently exist in?
Be interested to see what the committee does here. Joshua, it's time for helmet stickers. Why don't you go first?
All right, so I'm going to give you one and some food for thought along with it. Jacob Rodriguez, the great linebacker for Texas Tech, 9 tackles, interception, a PBU, and a rushing touchdown. The statement from them was, we want people to take him seriously as a Heisman Trophy candidate. And I'm here for it. I love the way that he plays the game. He's very physical. He's been a big part of why that defense has been able to make the improvements that it has. I just read you the stats. He's productive every game. You, as a Heisman voter, especially in this landscape in this year that we're watching, how does a defensive player like Rodriguez factor into your thought process and your evaluations?
It's much harder, right? Because the stats are different. And sometimes we do have more advanced stats, and PFF does individual grades and things, which some people have issues with. But they at least evaluate different things about pass rush rate and in pressures and passes defended and stuff like that. So that stuff does help. But I think you have like hundreds and hundreds of Heisman voters that are conditioned to looking at offensive stats.
No doubt.
It's really, really hard to do, and it just feels like it might be too late in the season to introduce a defensive player to this race.
That's unfortunate, because I feel like this thing has dragged out so late.
It's so open
that we should just accept anybody who's a contender at this point.
I agree, but do you think, and again, they need to be better. Like, everyone needs to be following college football 100%. And like tracking it a lot better. They should know who Jacob Rodriguez is, but
right.
I don't know. I think I agree with you, though, because they had him score the touchdown and do the pose.
Yes.
So, like, obviously they're trying to push that.
Yes.
And he's been a huge part of Texas Tech's success. My helmet sticker goes to Jeremiah Love.
Another guy.
He should also be in New York as a Heisman finalist. 23 carries, 147 yards against Pitt, the long touchdown run, the highlight we saw all day. Now, he's not going to win the Heisman, but he absolutely should be a finalist. Again, it's turning into a quarterback award this year, even though it's wide open. And Jeremiah Love, you can't tell me there's 5 players in college football that are better than him.
I wouldn't try to find that list. It'd be really hard to try to convince me.
We better get the finalists right this year
at
the very least. Okay, as we record this on Saturday nights, there are always some games still being played. We are recording this late in the primetime window. So we've got Georgia up 14-3, and we've got Ole Miss. Oh, they just took the lead back. So 26-24 Florida, they're having trouble. And that's the team, let's start there.
Yep.
Because Florida was the team that knocked them out of the CFP last year.
Yes.
And I told y'all, if you listen to the midweek pod, I said that they're going to have some trouble here. And it just feels like it's ripe for the narrative, too, because this is the school and the fan base that like really wants Lane Kiffin.
Right.
And you even have people who are like rooting for Lane to lose so that he'll be available earlier in the carousel, which is also kind of crazy. But these are the kinds of games that give me pause about Lane Kiffin.
I agree with that. It feels like there's always a screw around game or two from Lane, whether it's the game plan's not dialed in or he gets too pass happy, or the defense he just completely didn't even think about making sure to coach those guys during the week. I do want to address this, though, because I feel like we've seen some of these teams who have coaches that are being mentioned for jobs struggle. And I think it's one of the most interesting things to me, because as a player, I don't know if that would be a distraction for me.
So the coaches, though, it must be. In some capacity. It's
think
happening
it has
to
to
a
be.
lot of different coaches. Like all the group of 5 coaches
Yes.
that are rising stars on these lists.
Yes.
I mean, the Jed Fishes, the Lane Kiffins,
Yeah,
everybody.
Golish, like all these guys. And I think about it from the perspective of, it felt like every single year, all of our assistant coaches were interviewing somewhere when I was at Ohio State. We didn't care, like, go get your money.
Yeah.
And I get it's maybe different when it's your head coach that's looking around, but it's a really interesting thing to see how distracted some of these teams have looked.
Any thoughts on Georgia 14, Texas 3, although Texas has the ball and is driving?
Yeah, I think Arch has looked good and bad at the same time. I think his feet get a little bit happy with the pressure. Georgia's starting to become that team that I'm really trusting. They're scary to me right now.
They don't lose. They refuse to lose.
No, and I think Gunnar Stockton's playing.
He's playing really good
football. I think their defense
Although
is
he threw
starting
a
to
pick.
play much better. I mean,
Can't be perfect.
They're interesting.
Yeah,
to me.
we'll see how this one shakes out. We can wrap it up on the midweek pod. Last thought before we get out of here. Ohio State is up 27-0. This game has not been competitive. No Nico Iamaleava. Quick thought on Julian Sands' Heisman campaign?
I'm in on the campaign. I think the historic efficiency is something that people need to take a look at. And I know folks are like, oh, well, all of his wide receivers, whatever. I've watched quarterbacks at Ohio State throw to, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and JSN, and Marv and Emeka Ibuka, and didn't have an 80% completion percentage across the year. He's at 73% as we're taping right now, and Carnell Tate's not playing, Jeremiah's not playing. He's a really good player, and I think people just need to get comfortable understanding how elite he has been in terms of getting the ball to where it needs to go.
Yeah, I think the winner of the Big Ten championship game is going to be the one that wins the Heisman. That'll do it for Rushing the Field, presented by Xfinity. Thanks for hanging.